So now we're talking podcasts.
Sure, but you just motivated me to maybe start a YouTube channel. Maybe.
I like it.
All
Is it
right,
gonna
let's
be
talk.
sports videography, or is it gonna be like a day in the life of Lance?
I don't know. We'll have to talk about that because I don't want to step on your toes and steal your
That-
audience.
All right, welcome back to the latest episode of Game Day Glare. My name is E. I'm here with my boy Lance. How are you
So
doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Oh, today we're talking about ourselves. No, we're talking about running a YouTube channel or a podcast or even like Instagram accounts and all that stuff. Like if you want to do something about sports and have like a social media presence, maybe make a bit of money from it, all that sort of stuff. We're talking about how to do it. I think we're mostly talking about our own experiences. We're not here to give lessons, but advice, I'd say. And yeah, so that's what the show's about. And so how's your YouTube channel going, by the way? Because
Yeah,
there's
I don't have a
rumors that
YouTube
you're supposed
channel.
to start one.
I don't have a YouTube channel yet. I will eventually start one. I will. But like honestly, today we want to talk about the importance of being consistent, right? And social media, and that's one of the most challenging things. If you're out there and you're a freelancer, how do you create content for yourself? How often are you sharing that content? And where are you sharing that content? And just because you're not getting thousands and thousands of views right away, it doesn't mean that your content isn't working. It doesn't mean that you should stop. Like make the content and just keep going. So one of those things, E, is YouTube, right? And your domain is YouTube. So for the next, we have scheduled here 30 minutes. I'm just going to ask you tons of YouTube questions. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I'm used to it anyway. But yeah, no, let's do this.
No,
I'm
okay.
sorry,
So
there's a bit of noise around me, by the way. So if yeah, there's my next door neighbors are renovating, so apologies.
so with YouTube, right, and being consistent, how hard is that struggle to try to be consistent first?
Well, for me, actually, it is quite hard. I don't think it depends because it just depends on how much quality you want to put into it. Because first of all, it will be a struggle no matter what. So the first advice is definitely to pick something that you're doing because you love it, you're passionate about it, and you're doing it because it's your hobby, you're having fun, you enjoy making more and more and more of it. And you have like 100 different ways like 100 different video ideas that you have just straight off the bat. Like you can see yourself doing this video and that video and that video. Because if you only have like, oh yeah, I like to make basketball edits and I'm a huge, Golden State Warrior fan, and then you make 2 or 3 videos about Steph Curry, and then you're like, all right, now what? So if you have an idea about a YouTube channel, it has to be something that you can see yourself doing for a long, long time. Because if you don't enjoy it on a real personal level, you're gonna grow tired of it, especially because it's gonna take you a long time before you start making any money, and the first money you're gonna make is not gonna pay for all those years of not making any. So you got to do it for fun and enjoy the process. So I'm still enjoying the process very much. What's making it more difficult is the fact that as my channel is growing, I'm sort of putting more and more pressure on myself to make sure that the quality is up there, and that I'm talking about videography, so I want to make sure that from a videography perspective, like the proof is in the pudding, and that people see my channel and they go like, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. I can tell by his image quality and edits and all that stuff. So because I'm putting all that extra pressure on myself, then it's taking me longer to make the videos, and it's when I'm approaching like my next video, coming up with the idea and then the filming and all these things is not that complicated, but putting it together sometimes it's a bit slow to get started because it's a bit daunting to know, like what you're gonna have to do to get there, and it's like, it's a lot of work. But so from that perspective, sometimes that can affect consistency. And I am definitely not the most consistent in terms of posting. Like my goal is always to post like once a week. I usually do it for like a month, and then I get once every 2 weeks. Sometimes I skip 2 to 3 weeks, but ultimately, I think it's better to skip a week and just, stay happy about what I'm doing than force myself to do it every week and just be miserable because I had to cram it by like working at night or doing all these crazy things, or like not seeing my friends, not seeing my family because I don't have time. I had to do these videos and things like that. Like I'd rather do, like, the whole purpose of being my own boss and being on YouTube and doing what I want is the freedom ultimately of just doing my thing the way I want. So if I'm stopping myself from having fun, from doing all these other things that are going on in my life because I have to post every week, then that makes me sort of miserable, and that ultimately makes me less consistent. So even though I am not super consistent in the grand scheme of things, I think I am. That makes any sense.
Well, look, we are doing this podcast and we are consistent with this, right? So you are doing content every week, and it does bring people back to your other channel. So even if for some reason you don't have a Beyond the Game video that week, you do have this. So you are still doing content. What I found interesting is being your friend, and you moved to Australia, and I remember the first time all of a sudden you popped up on my Facebook and I saw you had your YouTube channel, and I was like, wow, it took me by surprise because you're an editor, you're behind the camera. I never saw you as a person in front of the camera, and you do a great job of showing people new skills, sharing your stories. And that was an aspect of you that I did not know in our friendship. Yes, you and I worked together, and we shared ideas. We checked each other's work. We helped each other out. But it was nice seeing you on the YouTube platform doing that. And I was very, very surprised. And we've mentioned this before, but English is not your first language. So I'm happy that all those English lessons I gave you finally paid off, and you were able to go on YouTube. Because honestly, when we first started working together, you were very, very much working in French. You were bilingual, but we mostly dealt with each other in French. Well, I spoke to you in French. You would speak to me in English because my French is so bad that you were like, "Listen, let's just switch the language."
Sure, I'll do it.
Headed back to YouTube.
That's very Canadian of like, the French guy speaks in English, the English guy speaks in French. We're all trying to please each other.
So headed back to YouTube now. How hard was that to pick a niche? Like, obviously I know you are working in sports videography, but there's so many niches out there. So when you said, okay, listen, I'm going to make my own channel, what was it like for you to pick a niche, or did you already know, like, I'm going sports videography 100%?
No, well, the niche actually evolved a lot since the original idea. But first of all, actually, regarding consistency, I wanted to say, like, when you mentioned the podcast, I think what's really helpful with the podcast to make it a lot more consistent than my other stuff is you, in the sense that, like, obviously I've said this many times, you do most of the work, when we're not on screen, like, but beyond that, the fact that you have someone that you have to be accountable to, like, what I mean? Like, we decided we're going to do this once a week. So like, I want to make sure that I do my part, and I do like what we're supposed to do together. Cause if I start, like canceling and you start doing the same thing, this is the beginning of the end. Like, whether it's this or any type of project that people do together, like small businesses and stuff. So that keeps you accountable, that keeps you consistent. So it's really helpful to have these types of projects with someone, as long as you guys both have like the same vision and the same goals with that project. That being said,
with you and I, what helps is, you know what, we talk like this all the time before and after the show. And my trick is, if you ever work with E, this is the trick, okay? I tell him the show starts at 11, but the show really starts at 11:30, and I know he'll show up at 11:15, and it works.
Sure, it's a good, it's a good plan. Now I know.
That's it. All right, now back to your niche. How did you decide to niche down?
Well, yeah, originally, Beyond the Game, the idea was that I really enjoyed watching sports documentaries like 30 for 30 and all these things and, 24/7 on HBO, these sort of things. So I wanted to do a web version of that. And I'm having this idea in like 2014, maybe 20, yeah, because we started in 2015, I think. Yes.
So you're coming up on 10
So
years. Wow.
yeah, but back then it wasn't, yeah, exactly what it is now. But the concept of Beyond the Game TV at the time, which is now only Beyond the Game, but it was, yeah, I started thinking about it in 2014. So back then, blogs were more a thing. YouTube was obviously there, but it wasn't blowing up. Like there was no vlogs and things like that. So it wasn't, or it was just starting. Um, so it was more of a like let's have a blog sort of website, but with videos instead of articles, which already existed, but there was nothing about sports. So I was like, oh, if I can do like a thing about a place where people would go and watch little documentaries that instead of obviously I didn't have the budgets of a Netflix or something, but we can do little short stories that can go for 5 to 10 minutes. And I live in Australia at the time, so I would do it about Australian athletes and sometimes like a lot of American or European athletes would come to Australia to compete for whatever reason, and I would usually be involved in these things, or even if I wasn't, like sometimes there was a lot of promo. Like I remember like this, for example, not too far from where I lived in Melbourne, Australia, there was every year there's like a big international surfing competition. So all the big surfers would be there, and it was easy, well, easy to get access to them and get like just like a one-on-one 5 to 10 minute interview. And from that interview, we would build like a short sort of documentary about their lives and what they've been through. And yeah, we did that a couple of times. And also we built like a relationship with the UFC. So therefore we could have like interviews with fighters, same thing with the tennis. So we would sort of do that. But then, it's obviously need resources. Like I had a producer whose job was to book all these interviews and athletes and things like that. It's not like you've got them all lined up to do something every week. So eventually, yeah, I was trying to fill the gaps, and vlogs were becoming much more of a thing. So I was like, oh, maybe we can do like a behind the scenes sort of concept where people see what we do when we're at sporting events doing our job, and that way that will fill in the gaps in between documentaries, and we started doing that, and from there, like I think that's at the time where like channels like Casey Neistat and he was at his peak, so that's probably where my vlogging idea came from. And then Peter McKinnon came on the scene as well, and he was doing a lot of tutorials about videography, and I thought, oh yeah, I could do something like that, like keep the vlogging sort of concept going, but do it sometimes more from a tutorial perspective, specific about the sports videography, because there was like nothing, because everything for me, it was like I never try to be necessarily the best at someone. I always enjoy more being first. Like I always think, like someone once told me, like like even though you're the best at something, eventually someone's gonna beat you, and you're never gonna be the best again. But if you're the first at something, like no one's ever gonna take that away from you. You're always gonna be first, right? So I was sort of always excited about. So when I had an idea that I thought was smart and that no one was doing it, I was like, all right, I got to do it. And so with sports videography, I was like, all right, let's do this, because when I did go on YouTube and type sports videography, how to make sports videos. I was trying to all these different combinations, and the same thing would happen every single time. There was like 2 videos made by 2 separate people that were just videographers, just doing like general videography, and they had like one video about basketball, and the other guy had one video about football, and that was it. There was just nothing else on the entire YouTube landscape. So I was like, shit, I'm going in and I'm doing this. So I did like a few, and views were terrible at first, but there was definitely an interest in terms of like the engagement. A lot of people were asking questions. The people who were watching, they were asking questions. They were like very happy that finally there was a videography channel that was addressing like specifically the content that they were trying to film. So they would relate to that a lot more than, wedding videographers or all these, like back then specifically, especially like it was all about traveling videographers. So every time you'd see a videographer on a YouTube channel, it was always showing you these amazing landscape and super slow-mo, and they'd be going on jet skis and doing all these things. And it's like, well, I'm just trying to film a football game. Like, how does that, how can I take this and use it in my thing? And here I am coming up and telling them exactly how to film a football game or baseball or whatever. So that really took off, not necessarily in terms of views, but in terms of like a community that's actually like finally like happy to see something that they can relate to. And I could definitely relate to it because that was my entire, well, maybe not entire, but most of my professional career. Because I've been in sports since the Canadians, so since 2006. So it was easy for me to talk about all this stuff, and it was interesting as well because I was going behind the scenes, and I could do it in a way that was like I wasn't just in my office talking to a camera like I am right now. I was also at events and like at sporting events, and that's what I like the most actually. Like those are the videos I enjoy the most, like being on site and showing people at a game like what I'm doing and how this piece of equipment or this technique sort of looks on in the field. So yeah, that's how like the niche sort of came about, and once I figured out as well that it was a much better way to build a business than all the other stuff, because I did a lot of UFC stuff for a long time, and I was getting way more views with my UFC content, but you're making a little bit more money on YouTube, but it's not enough to make a living. So like, then what? Like I have to find sponsors and things like that. And then, I'm just some random dude who barely knows anything about combat sports and just talks about it on YouTube. Like I didn't really see that as it's not like people are going to sponsor me thousands of dollars to say my half-ass opinions about fighters I barely know. So I was like, well, how is that going to translate into anything business-wise? Where with sports videography, I could definitely see a path where I could, yes, do brand deals and stuff, but beyond that, the affiliates, the my own packs, things like that. So like, oh yeah, there's definitely a business opportunity there. So that also got me excited because I've been pretty much a freelance / entrepreneur my entire life. So I like the business side of it as well. So the two of them together, this is like the best of both worlds for me. So I went all in, and here I am full time on YouTube. And I don't even have I don't have that many subscribers, but I'm making a living off YouTube. And I'm pretty sure most people with my, that have my, view counts and subscriber count, probably still have a day job or at least a part-time job.
You are doing pretty good on YouTube, though. You have what, 77,000 followers, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Subscribers. I'm happy you went all on YouTube, because working in sports industry, I didn't realize that people want to hear those stories or people want to know the technical side of it, because it never dawned on me to start a YouTube channel about it. I've been in pro sports for 23 years, and you go to barbecues or parties and people are always like, oh, you work in sports. Oh, you work for this team. Oh, so cool. And that's where the conversation ends. So, like, people want to know, is there gossip? What about the team? They never ask you, oh, what kind of gear are you using?
Yeah.
What kind of mic are you using? At least at these family functions or parties and stuff. But when you go online, you realize that there is an audience and there are people that have those questions, or people that want to get in the field, or people that are working in the field. And every time I go on a new job or with a new crew or something like that, even though I've been there for a long time, I'm learning stuff, or I'm trying new stuff. I'm talking to people. I'm building those networks. And that's what you did with YouTube, is you networked out there. And it really, really opened the doors for a lot of sports videographers. Now, how is it that you plan your shows, your ideas? Like, how is it that you come up with these concepts? Now, obviously, sometimes it's trendy because there's a new camera coming out, so that's an easy topic. But how are you, what's like beyond the game? How are you coming up with these videos?
Well, first of all, I think my channel is kind of, I've said this before, like it's kind of like a library of of sports videography content. So it's always about having all these different topics that when someone will research like how to do this or what camera should I buy or things like that, then they'll find me. And there's pros and cons with that. Like I think the good thing is that you do get some search traffic, but I also do think that my subscriber count is a little bit inflated because of that. Like a lot of people, a channel like mine, the same way I see like channels about After Effects, for example. And I'm like, oh yeah, this guy has great tips, great like effects that I can learn. I'll subscribe and then I'll come back and do like a few tutorials to learn After Effects. And I subscribe, I watch probably the video that got me there in the first place, and I never go back. Right? Like I never actually do those tutorials and things like that. So I think there's a lot of that going on my channel as well. But that's fine. I mean, like I said, I'm making a living off of it, and so I can't complain. But so all that to say that I try to find topics that will be interesting for someone in sports videography that's most likely a beginner or sort of intermediate. Like I don't think I appeal that much to like full-on experts because I try to keep things simple, and I'm not like a super techie guy that knows everything about everything, and I don't pretend to be one either. So I try to find topics that people will look for, that topics that are definitely helpful, and the purpose at the end of the day is for someone to learn something in my videos. So whether it's a setting that can make your life easier, whether it's which camera is the most helpful for this situation, or an accessory that can make your filming experience more convenient or easier to do this or do that. And so it's always about finding something because people go to YouTube to solve a problem. So how can I make it interesting and problem solving in a way? So it's like, oh, can this camera help me achieve that? Or can this little tutorial make me a better editor? Like it's all about these things. And yeah, so that's usually what I do, because sometimes I did try, because they say like, oh, you need to make it like super personal and so that people sort of connect with you and therefore they'll be there to watch every video. And I think it's definitely true, but like it depends on the type of topic, on the type of the type of channel that you have. And I think for me, as much as the people who watch all my videos, like I'm pretty sure appreciate my personality, they're here first and foremost to learn something. So I don't spend that much time like all the vlogging stuff that I was talking about earlier. There's still a bit of it when I'm filming sort of in the field, but other than that, I don't film myself like making coffee or doing like these little transitions of me going from one place to another. Like if it doesn't really make sense, I won't try to squeeze it in just to make it more of a story, because I feel like, I don't know, my channel is more educational and I want to make sure that people get something out of it. And I've got nothing against the other stuff. I think some people do it and it's amazing and it's way better than the way I do it. For example, and I've said this many times on this channel as well, I think like Pete Gottschalk, who's been on the show, he's like really good at vlogging through his videos, and it's really seamless, and his storytelling is perfect, and it fits his channel, it fits his personality, it fits his style. I think my channel is a bit more specific to like, here's the issue we're going to talk about today and how we're going to resolve it. So that's how I sort of approach each episode. But, sometimes I mix it up.
How many videos do you have on your YouTube channel or in your, let's call it your library?
It's a good question. I think there's a bit over 200. I don't know the exact number, but like we're counting all the other stuff that I did before. I did delete a lot of them, but when I cleaned house and decided that my channel was going to be about sports videography, I did either delete or made private a lot of videos that I just felt, because I didn't want people to come into my channel because of those videos and then get feed the sports videography content that has absolutely nothing to do with what they subscribe for, and then therefore, like when my videos show up to them and they don't watch it, then the video stops being shown to people because the algorithm's like, well, we're showing this video to your new subscribers, but they don't care. So anyway, all that to say that I got rid of a lot of old stuff, but there's still a few because I thought it was important for people to see what I can do in terms of like doing a documentary or, you know, a series or behind the scenes of stuff. But I only kept the stuff that was really sort of along those lines. Like I got rid of a lot of other, like I got rid of a lot of UFC stuff, for example. Like all my opinion sort of pieces about UFC are pretty much gone, but yeah, it's a long answer to say. Probably between 200 and 250, something like that.
Well, what's cool about your channel is a lot of your videos are evergreen, you know, so I can go back right now and look at a video that you did a year ago or 2 years ago. Obviously, when you talk about specific equipment, that's more dated, but techniques or reasons why or what you do in this position. And it's really good to have an evergreen channel like that. So now, are there any tools that you use that help you stay consistent? Like, are you using like a Sauna or Motion for your calendar, or how are you, like, how are you staying consistent, and what are you using to be consistent?
Not really, to be honest. I just know that the more consistent you are, usually the easier it gets in terms of like getting views, especially when you launch the video, because when people expect, they know that every Thursday morning you launch a video, then they sort of not necessarily make time for it, but they'll say, oh, it's Thursday morning, there must be a new video, and then they'll go check for. But so if they all, not all, but if a lot of people do that, then your video gets a lot of traction from the jump and then gets shown to more people, and it sort of goes better from there. Where with me, I struggle to do that, and like Peter, for example, Pete Sorellis, every Monday morning, I'm pretty sure all his videos come out. So I'm sure that a lot of sports videographers out there know that, and then on Monday morning, whether it's on their way to work or when they're having breakfast or at work, maybe at lunch or something like that, they watch the video. For me, you know, I try to do it like Tuesday, Wednesday, and then like that was my plan today, and then it's probably gonna go to Thursday because I got busy yesterday doing other stuff. So, and but so yeah, it's I'm a bit inconsistent in that way, which is probably not helpful. But like you said, it's evergreen content, so really all that it's hurting is the views that I'm getting up front. But in the long run, all these people that didn't really know when the video is coming out, eventually it's going to pop out the next time they're on YouTube or the time after that, and they're going to watch it. So in the long run, doesn't really matter. I get the views because, like you said, whether you watch it when it comes out or a year from now, it's still, for the most part, all my videos are still as relevant as they were when I released them. So it's not that stressful. It's just sometimes it's a bit deflating when you've put like a lot of work into a video thinking that it's going to be like really great. And then it's like your worst, the worst video you've made that month in terms of views. And you're like, oh, you know, all that work for that. And it's a bit depressing, but then you sort of forget about it. You move on to the next one. And then a few months later, you're looking at your stats and you're like, oh yeah, this video is actually done pretty great. I just forgot about it. And so all that to say that the tools that I use for that are pretty much just me trying to motivate myself to do, you know, like basically block out days in the week to just dedicate to video production. Like I try to have like Monday, Tuesday is just me trying to do a YouTube video, which doesn't always happen, but that's the plan anyway. Otherwise, I use a Trello app to sort of keep track of everything I do, but that's not really a YouTube thing. It's just like my life in general.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's about it.
Your life needs to go by the algorithm, okay? It's all about the algorithm when you're doing these videos. Now, YouTube is a pretty volatile place. You know, it's up and down. You have a lot of creators right now who seem to be quitting YouTube. Now, you ever have like burnout or hard to stay motivated on YouTube? Because it's not easy to every week, You're your own boss and you're like, I need to do a video this week. You need to find a topic. You need to research. You need to find the time to film, the time to edit. What's that like?
Yeah, well, I think it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, because I really love the idea that I've got, like I said earlier, I've got the freedom to do whatever I want whenever I want. And, like that goes for my schedule, but it also goes for the fact that like no one's telling me what to put in the videos. No one's telling me at the end of my edit, I don't like the music, or, can we take that shot out? Like there's none of that in my life. And that's really fun. But at the same time, yeah, it can be easy when you've got no one to answer to get lazy, and then it's hard to motivate yourself to start working at 9 and then get straight into it, where you could easily just relax and have breakfast, watch a little bit of television, and then next thing you know, you do a bit of email, a bit of this, and then it's lunchtime, and then when am I actually going to start editing? Today was supposed to be an editing day, and now it's like 2 in the afternoon. I haven't touched the Premiere Pro at all. So like you have to be disciplined to do that, and not everybody has that discipline in them. So it's up to you to recognize like who you are and what you're good at and what you're capable of. And are you more of a team environment person, or are you more of a by yourself? Like I'm kind of both, but when it comes to this stuff, like I love the idea that like everything relies on me. Like if I do poorly, then I'm not making any money, and if I do great, then I'm making money. Like I couldn't be like a government worker, for example, with a very like steady paycheck, and my pay raises come like at every 5 years or whatever it is, and there's nothing that I can do to change any of that. So even if I'm the best employee in the whole building, I'm still going to make the exact same amount of money than if I was the worst. That for me is very difficult to deal with, because I would lose all my motivation, and if there was no incentive to be good at what I do, unless I'm working like directly with people and I'm making them feel better or something like that. Like if I was a doctor, for example, I wouldn't slack off.
No.
but yeah, like so for me, I do like the idea that like my motivation is always coming from, if I'm not doing it, everything falls apart. So I'm always sort of motivated by that to push it further, to go above and beyond, and to try to find new ways to do certain things. And yeah, that's pretty much that's been driving me so far. We'll see what happens in 10 years or whatever, when I'm old and tired, and business probably gonna shift. I'm probably not gonna be doing what I'm doing right now for the rest of my life. But
You'll have to delete the videos where you had dark hair, because later on it'll just be all gray hair. Is that what it is? Now,
AI will take care of all that.
Yeah, you said something interesting. 9 to 5. You were never a 9 to 5 guy. When you and I shared an office, we had a pretty good schedule worked out. So I'm a morning person. E is not. So I'd come in around 7:30, and E would come in at noon. But I would leave around 3:34, where E would leave around 8 at night. So it worked out great for our relationship, because we were in an open office editing audio and stuff, and sometimes we get on each other's nerves. And E would put on his headset and he'd turn over his shoulder and give me the look like lower it. Or my friends would come in the office before a game, and we'd all be getting ready for the game, and he would be struggling to finish a last minute project, and he'd be telling us, "Okay, guys, could you just be quiet for 5 more minutes, please, please?" So you were never a 9 to 5 guy. Now, sure. With your YouTube channel being consistent, how has it helped you grow and like secure contracts? Because obviously you are still trying to get some side contracts too, or networking to help build your channel. So how has that consistency helped you in those domains?
Well, it's mostly that now, like, it just brings me, it validates, it's like my CV on steroids, basically. It just, people just see the YouTube channel, and automatically they're like, oh yeah, this guy is good enough to do whatever we need him to do. So yeah, it's easier to, not necessarily to get jobs, because I'm not actively seeking any jobs. Like when people reach out to me and they're like, oh, would you be interested in filming this for us and things like that? I definitely look into it and do it. I've done it multiple times, but I'm not like actively looking for new clients and new gigs and then in that way. But what I am doing though is looking for games and events that I can go to and film for the channel, and that's been way easier now than ever because the channel is so it's built in a way that like all I have to say is I just email the right person and say, look, this is what I do. This is my channel. I'd love the opportunity to go film one of your games, and I can share my footage with you guys. Here's a link to my YouTube channel so you can have a look. And and no one's ever said no, like since I started asking, because they just like the idea, and it's in that sense, having the channel is giving me, it's like my business card, basically. It gives me access to everything because it gives me a certain status. I don't know how to put it, but
All right. So we're almost done your part of the show. Okay. Almost. We're almost there. I know you're looking at the clock and you're like, hey, I've been talking for 35 minutes. Now,
yeah, exactly.
What advice would you give, say me, if I'm starting my own YouTube channel and now you've done this for 10 years now, what advice would you give me, like, to start and to be consistent?
Well, like I said at the start, like it has to be something that you really enjoy doing, and and it has to be because you enjoy doing it and not because you see this as a career path. I think the career thing comes in later on when the channel is successful and you're like, all right, now I've got momentum going. I'm enjoying this. I want to do more of it. How can I turn that into a career? If from the get-go you see that as a career, you're going to be so disappointed because it's going to take you so long to get there. Because that's the reason why there's not that many like sports videographers doing it, because they all have full-time jobs and they're doing the like you do 2-3 videos, you don't really get that many views, you don't really get any you definitely don't get any money, and you're like, well, it's taking a lot of my time. And then many times I've collabed with people and I'm the one reaching out to them, and they're not YouTubers, it's just like everyday sports videographers, and I just found their content on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, cool, they definitely want to collab, and then they do it once and then it takes them so much time, and then they're like, well, like just the idea of doing it again is just like they're already tired. So for that reason, that you really have to enjoy the process. And also because the most people who reach out to me about their channel, it's always like they want to do an NBA edit channel or sports edit channel, and then they're trying to figure out the whole copyright aspect of all this, and they're trying to use professional sports content and somehow make money from it, and it's not going to happen. Like you might, if you make millions of views, you might get some sponsorships or things like that, and that way you'll be making some money. But you're not, just because you're getting a lot of views on YouTube, and you're going to get copyright claims, you're going to get videos that are blocked, you're going to get all these things, and even to get to that point, it's years of making videos. Or you can do shorts. That's probably going to go viral a lot quicker. But a video, like a normal video that makes me like a certain amount of views. Let's say I'm saying random numbers here, but let's say I'm making $500 for 50,000 views on a long form video, which is not the case. But the same video, like the same amount of views on a short, instead of 500 would be like $2. Like there's a huge difference. So you're not making tons of money with shorts unless you're having shorts that are making millions of views literally every day. So like the idea that you can just go on YouTube and steal content here and there, put it together and make a living, like this is not happening. So just be realistic about how you want to approach this, because it has to be your content. It has to be something that you enjoy, something that you're not going to grow tired. If you're not going to get tired of doing it if you're doing it like multiple days a week for years. So all of this together, find something that really, you're happy doing that and you can see yourself doing, but at the same time, don't all overcomplicate it as well. Like, just start, see if you enjoy it, see if you're having fun, and then go from there. So now we're talking podcasts.
Sure, but you just motivated me to maybe start a YouTube channel. Maybe.
I like it.
All right,
let's talk sports videography, or is it going to be like a day in the life of Lance?
I don't know. We'll have to talk about that because I don't want to step on your toes and steal your audience. All right, let's talk podcast now. I'll let you finally start asking some questions.
Yes, now the show starts. We'll have to put like a marker at, for the real content. Go to the 40-minute mark.
That's it.
But what I want to know, actually, since you're the one that came up with the idea for this podcast, what originally, what motivated you to do this? Why did you reach out to me specifically? And then what's your goal with this whole adventure?
That's a tough first question there, E. But all right, we'll back it up a bit.
I want the truth.
That's it. So listen, I was working in sports videography for 20 years. Had a nice cushy job. COVID hit and it made me pivot. And I started, during COVID, was still working full time, but I was doing more projects on the side remotely from home, editing. And then I kind of saw an opportunity. So I started my own company. I was still in this full-time job. And then there was a way to leave that full-time job. So I left that, was working freelance for a while. And then I started working for this other company in medical, which was completely different than sports entertainment. I was there for about a year and a half. And then they had layoffs and I ended up getting laid off. But I still had my company. So I was still doing freelance stuff. And I said, okay, now's the chance for me to go all in. And I realized working for myself, the benefits, like I was making, well, it wasn't easy, but I ended up making more money and having more free time working for myself. But I found myself in the position where I needed to start selling myself. Before, when I was working for a company, they were coming to me with projects all the time. So I didn't have to look for projects. And that was a big adjustment, was looking for projects. And it was tough. And the reason why I started this was because when I applied for new jobs, I had too much experience. Nobody wanted to hire me with my experience because they were afraid of the salary that came with it. And a lot of people were looking for video, but they were looking for starters. Even if you look on Indeed, LinkedIn, most of the video jobs are like 2-3 years experience. They're looking for junior positions. When you show up to a job and you're like, I have 20 years experience, what do you want to do? We could do it all. It was intimidating. And I was tired of getting told no. So I went all in on my own company. And it was scary as hell. It was scary. But once I got a couple of contracts and I came up with a system, it became a lot easier and it became really, really worth it. Like, I'm happier than when I worked a 9-to-5. Yes, the 9-to-5 was secure, but once I got a system, I got to find that freelance can be as secure with retainer deals and stuff like that. Yes, I could still do one and done projects, but if I had a couple of retainer projects, I wasn't chasing people for money all the time. So that's kind of how I started thinking. And then what I noticed is, running my own company, I needed content. And it's hard. Like, when I watch your YouTube and I see you set up your camera, and I know you don't have a second shooter, you're purposely doing stuff so you can edit to that footage later, like whether it's you filming a basketball game, you have your FX30 behind you on a tripod, and it's kind of, you're walking in frame and out of frame and making sure you have that stuff. So I thought about that in a corporate space. How am I going to do that? Am I going to hire a second shooter and have him just film me while I'm filming people's content? I needed something to kind of show that I was an authority in the space, or an authority that at least I knew what I was talking about. So then I started listening to people's podcasts. And I was like, wow, podcasting is a great way to have consistent content. Yes, you have the full show. So, like you and I, we put this show on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And every week, every Wednesday, our viewers know that we're putting out a show. Now, it's not always easy to put it out every Wednesday. You and I know. We'll go into that after, but it's tough being consistent. So my idea was like, okay, if I do this and we do a podcast and I break it up to clips, it's an easy way for my company and my show to have consistent content. Now, the reason why I reached out to you was simple. You were already in the space. You and I already had a great friendship, like even when you were in Australia, we still shoot messages back and forth, but we became really, really close when we were, sharing an office together, going for chicken nacho lunches all the time across the street, the late night.
Chicken pad thai.
Yeah, pad thai also. We'd also, treat ourselves every now and then to a beer when we worked those late nights, and we really formed a good friendship. So it was important for me to find someone who I could talk shop with. And you were already doing that on YouTube, and you had an audience. So when I pitched this to you, I said, listen, I want to start something. Do you think your audience would be interested in this also? And so far, it seems like they are. Now, we don't have your full audience, obviously, but this is like a slow burn, and we are building something. So that was my idea of why I want to do a podcast and not YouTube right away, because I was afraid to be vulnerable and on camera and talking, because it was something that I hadn't done in years. I was behind the scenes for so long that I was like, who wants to hear my story? Who wants to see me on camera? But then I'm like, hey, if E could do it, I could definitely do this, son. No problem. So I hope that answered your first question. Sure. I don't know if it was a little long, but basically I did this to start getting
long answers all day.
That's it. I started this to get consistent content and to put myself out there to try something new. And it's really rewarding. Like, honestly, having you and I to keep each other accountable, knowing that, one day this week we're going to film, we're going to edit, we'll have our show up. It's nice. Like, every week in my calendar, I have in my calendar a spot reserved for Game Day Glare.
So take us through like what's the take behind the scenes to get an episode sort of online and ready? Like, where does it start? What's the process?
First, it starts with multiple emails and texts to E that he does not respond to. Okay. And I'm like, are you still alive? Can you please respond now? No.
I'm like, new phone, who this?
Yeah, exactly. So honestly, what we did at first, we came up with a list of 20 topics we can talk about. And we started going through, the basics like editing software, stuff like that. Then we came up with a list of guests that we can have. Now, guests are hard. Guests is probably one of the hardest parts, because we're trying to organize your schedule, my schedule, and our guest schedule. And normally our guests are working still with teams or in the field. So it's really, really tricky, because we have 3 or 4 more guests booked already that we just haven't had the time because of scheduling. So that's a tricky part, is figuring out what are we talking about this week and what guests can we have on. So once we finalize that, we go through the common questions. So I always ask E, I give him a little homework. Hey, ask on your YouTube channel if people have any questions in that, because we want people's opinions. We want to be able to help people. And that was the real idea of this. Is I don't want a podcast that's surrounded all about you and I and the things we filmed and, oh, we're so cool. No, we want to be able to help somebody. And that's what I got inspiration from your YouTube channel. Because you told me one time that as long as you help 1 or 2 people, you feel like your channel is a success. And that's how I kind of felt about this podcast, is if we can help some people, then hey, then it's all worth it. And we're benefiting by getting content. So you share content sometimes on Beyond the Game when you have a slow week. I'm constantly sharing content on this. So the week usually starts off with, I don't know what, I send it on Monday to E, send him an email, and basically we break up the show in bullet point of how it's kind of like, I call it the show rundown, where come up with random questions, come up with topics, and we try and keep the show in an order. Now that's the hardest part, but with a little help from AI, sometimes it has sped up the process. But we have categories, and we get off topic though. We do get off topic, but we try and stick to the show rundown, and it makes it go a lot smoother. So that's usually on Mondays, and then we chit chat back and forth throughout the week. And then on usually Wednesday or Thursday, we film our episode. Now, editing is a whole complete other story, right, E? Because E and I are somewhat organized.
I don't know. I don't know anything about editing.
I edit most of the shows, but E's running a YouTube channel. I'm not running a YouTube channel, so I don't mind editing the shows as much as I do. But
I might have to do this one now with all the audio problems I'm bringing into it.
That's it. But we're lucky. We always have 2 or 3 shows in the bank that we film, because basically when we started this, the hardest part was E and I were doing this, and we were doing podcasts weekly. We did 3 weeks and we didn't launch any of them. And then I was away in Florida, and he texts me, he goes, "Are we ready?" And I was scared, man. I was scared to release that first podcast because I had never put myself out there before. So having 3 in the bank is always nice. So yes, sometimes when we talk about things, our timing's off, and I'm sure our audience is like, well, how come they're talking about that now? The Boston Celtics won the playoffs 4 weeks ago. But that's the reason. And then we only do that because of our schedules, and we don't know what happens if for some reason 1 week, I don't know, he has a busy week, or there's another pandemic, or we're busy, or I don't know. You never know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we work it. And so far, honestly, having those pre-recorded shows have helped, because I don't feel stressed to edit it and to have it ready right away. Even though there are times where, like you kind of mentioned, being your own boss, you slack. And there's times where I've edited Wednesday's show on a Monday, even though I've had it for 3 weeks, and I just don't tell you. Yeah.
So it's true. So to come out.
So yeah, we edit the shows usually on Mondays, and then we release them every Wednesday. But what I try to do in my calendar, so I'll use tools like Asana. I use Asana, which is equivalent to your Trello. On Mondays, I try and book Mondays where it's like a CEO day for my company. That's where I get back all my emails. I make a list of who I got to contact this week for upcoming jobs, what my week is going to really look like, and I edit the shows on that Monday. That answer your question? No.
Really?
Yeah.
I was going to ask as well, like, because it's funny, like what you said about, being afraid to put yourself out there, and that's kind of why you went podcast versus YouTube. Because for me, YouTube is kind of like, I wasn't afraid to put myself out there because it was YouTube, because I felt like nobody's gonna, like, I was way more afraid of my friends and family seeing me in videos than people I don't know. I hope I'm not offending anyone, but like, I couldn't care less what people I don't know think about me. It was more like the people that I do know that I was sort of afraid and, shy about all of a sudden popping up in videos. But because it was YouTube, I was like, my friends don't watch YouTube that much, and definitely not sports videography content. So like, no one's going to see this other than other sports videographers. So like, who cares? You know what I mean? I didn't really see it as a thing that, and also when I'm filming myself, I'm usually alone in the room like I am right now. So it's not like there's people seeing me doing this. So I never had that fear of like being judged or things like that. But with the podcast though, because we clip it a lot, then it's all over Instagram and it's all over these social media like Facebooks and stuff, where that's where all our friends are. That's where they all see us, whether they like sports videography or not. So that to me is a lot more scary than YouTube. But what would you say your other, like, is there any other things like for you that were like big, sort of, what's the word, like big challenges that you were either afraid of or that you're going through right now with the podcast?
Well, the first challenge was to be consistent. Like, I was like, if we're going to do this, let's do it. So, being consistent on clipping, right? So on Monday, the show that I edit, that's where I get all those clips from that day. So, we put, what do we have sometimes? Sometimes we have 30 clips and we put what, 7, 8? We don't go through all of them. So that was really important to me. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly. And I feel like the clips are so, so important. Now, the clip numbers are what bugs me. Like, I released a clip yesterday. We had like 1,000 views, but then all our other ones are at 400 views. Like, it's a slow burn, I find. So I want that I don't know. I want people to see it right away. I want reactions and stuff like that. But I realize I'm not going to get that. So I just try to make sure that I'm consistent and we're putting out good stuff. And that's what the real thing is the quality. Now, things that I struggle with, yeah, I find friends and family, it's tough with all the clips that we put out. So you have some people who are so supportive and think it's so cool. And you have another group that doesn't understand it and are like, why are you trying to be famous? And you're like, I'm not being famous at all. I'm just trying to, promote the podcast, promote Beyond the Game, promote my company, Premier Connoisseur Inc. So I'm putting this content out to be an authority in this space, to show people like, hey, this is why we do it. This is what we can do. This is how I can help you. And like you said, it's like having a CV on steroids. But when people don't understand that, they're like, oh, it's Lance and E again. Scroll. It's Lance and E again. Like, what are they talking about today? So that, it's hard. But you know what? I'm in my 40s. I can't care what everybody thinks all the time. And I made sure that I did this show for me. And you, obviously, because you're a part of this too. But I meant, like, I was like, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to do this for me because this is something that I need right now. It's going to help me in my business. It's going to help me grow as a person. And it helped me grow because it's scary. Like, I'm not going to lie. Every time before you and we chit chat and I press record, I always still have a little bit of butterflies when it starts. But once we're recording and we're talking, it's just you and I talking. So you kind of let go of that fear. And that's what, honestly, I would tell anybody is take the gamble and try it. And yeah, I'm thinking about doing a YouTube channel, but the reason why it's holding me back from YouTube, it's not about being on YouTube. It's not about imposter syndrome. It's more about, okay, how am I going to manage this? Being consistent with Game Day Glare, being consistent with the contracts that I have, and running a YouTube channel. That's the kind of thing that's stopping me now. Now, I don't have to release one every week, but I feel like it's important. And that's what, with this show, I feel that helps us is every Wednesday, we're releasing a show. Almost every day we're releasing clips. And I think that's what's helping us grow. And I do look at our analytics, and you look at our analytics too, and we are slowly growing. And it's nice to have that feeling that, oh, more people are listening. And we're very lucky that our viewers that do listen, they're invested because they listen throughout the whole thing. And I wasn't used to that. Like, when you go on YouTube, at least for me, like, I use my YouTube as a portfolio. People watch the first 10, 15 seconds. Like, you check our reels, 5 seconds is the average watch. But when you watch this, we're doing our podcast and the average watch is like 49 minutes. So it's like, wow, okay, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is very different because, like, yeah, on YouTube, I'd be lucky if I get 50% average, watch time on the video, where the podcast seems to be like more in the 80s. Yeah, percentile.
We're more interesting than we thought, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's because we keep the best part for the end.
That's it.
Yeah?
That's it.
I was gonna ask as well, like, because you say, like, you're trying to be an authority in your field and stuff, and do you feel like, have you seen yet, like, some impacts from that? Have you seen, like, an impact on clients, or like the way you approach potential clients and or jobs that you got since we started the podcast? Do you see this sort of coming together?
Well, look, so what I try and sell to my clients is a content package where I'll come into their office for, like, obviously we meet, we script, we figure out what their needs are and what their clients are talking about, what their clients need to hear, or a product they're selling. So I pitch like a 1-day shoot, and we can do 30 pieces of content from that 1-day shoot. Okay. And I needed to start doing that myself. So yes, we do this shoot and we get 30 pieces of content out of there. So at least when I have a meeting with a client, I could show them like, look, I'm putting out content too. Now it's different. I'm not selling a product. I'm not selling this, Apple mouse, or I'm not selling whatever LUT packages and stuff like that. But what I am trying to do, exactly, LUTs. But what I am trying to do is be consistent, and I show them the numbers. Like, it's silly, but when you show a client like, hey, my Instagram account reaches 12,000 accounts every week, what would happen if I put your product and you put it in front of 12,000 people? Do you think you'd be able to sell one of those products to somebody? And the second I show them the numbers of something that I'm doing that I started from scratch 6 months ago, and they see what I can bring to them, it definitely helps me sell the package. And it definitely gets them excited about, okay, yeah, I can be consistent on social media and it will lead to results. Now, not like we're selling anything in this podcast. We do talk about your LUTs and that. We talk about tools that we use that are beneficial. But in the corporate world, if you're selling a product that can really, really help somebody, the more eyes you get on that, the more opportunity you have to sell it. So that's one thing that I have noticed with clients. And it is weird because I don't have a niche per se in my business right now. I've done a lot of different things, and I am trying to niche down. And that is the challenge that I'm working on daily, is what's a good niche for me that keeps me excited and has opportunity for multiple videos out there.
All right. And do you have like a favorite part of doing the podcast? Like, is there like well, I'm assuming it's talking to me, but like, is there like a part that you enjoy more than others? And do you have a favorite, like, do you have like a favorite moment or episode or guest or something? Like, have we done enough episodes that you're already in your mind have a highlight?
So I think honestly, my favorite part of the podcast, honestly, is when we both show up together and we haven't even pressed record and we're just chit chatting. No, we're just chit chatting about our week and about like random stuff. And honestly, we should just press record one day and air it, because we do sometimes talk about stuff and we're always like, okay, save that for the podcast. So that's honestly like my favorite part, is every day just having that excitement to like, hey, let's put a new episode out there. Now, I think one of my favorite moments so far was having Shafiq on, because I thought it was cool that you and Shafiq finally got to meet each other. And Shafiq, he came in when you left. So I had to, I helped train him, and we became really, really good friends. And, it was interesting to see him share his story, because I know him as the guy I work with, right? And seeing him talk about his past and how he got to his journey, you don't realize everyone's journey all the time. You just meet them at the point where they're at. So it was kind of cool for me to relive. Like, yes, he told me that kind of stuff when we first started, but it was kind of neat for me to re-see him relive all that and how he got to the Canadians and how our paths finally met. So that was probably one of the coolest moments. And all our interviews are really, really good, because I like hearing how other people started. I like seeing other people's view on things. And we try to keep it differently. Like, yes, we've had like 3 videographers. We also had a guy in game production, Chili, on the show. And we have more people coming. But I like that challenge of finding guests that will be interesting. Like, look at Vinny. Like, when you think like, oh, sports videography, a DJ, what's a DJ going to have to bring to the show? But you see how a DJ impacts, first of all, just with the music, what's going on the ice. Then you see his perspectives, his stories with music and stuff. So it's really cool to have guests. And, we also don't want our viewers just to have you and me constantly. So I think having the guests are definitely one of the funnest parts about this show. And you never know who we're going to have, because we never know who we're going to have, because we're emailing our friends and we're like, are you available? When can you be on? So
yeah. Been emailing LeBron James.
That's it. He doesn't answer you back. Eh? What about you? What's your favorite part so far on this journey?
Good question. It's almost like someone else thought about it. No, I think, well, obviously, yeah, the guests are cool, but like just not just say something different, but I'd say uh, probably the first episode in a way, because I think that's when I knew like, yeah, it's gonna work. You know what I mean? Like, because before that, you don't know. Like, it's easy to have a phone conversation between the two of us and say, "Oh, look at us, we talked for an hour, so we should be fine." But you never really know. So when we did it the first time and it was easy, there was no like awkward pauses. There were no like you didn't look stressed, I didn't look stressed. There like everything sort of flowed well except for my English, and it just felt like, yeah, if it's like that every time, we're gonna be fine. I don't know if anyone's gonna be listening, but the podcast itself is gonna be fine. It's not like we're gonna have to edit parts out, get rid of the awkward silences or the technical difficulties or all this sort of stuff. It was just like a flowing for an hour or so, and yeah, that sort of reassured me that everything would be fine. So that's what I like.
One thing I want to mention about the podcast, and maybe it's a plug for them or not, but like we use Riverside for the software. And the reason why we do a remote podcast is just because we are in Montreal. And we do plan on actually sitting down one day and doing one live. But it's just easier for our schedules to have this look. And, you know, we coordinate, we make sure our lights in the back are the same shades of blue and red, and, you know, but this was just an easier option for us. And I find it's working great. So as a tool that we do use, instead for like calendar organizers and stuff like that, Riverside is definitely a tool that we do use often. And I'm very, very happy with it, I think.
Oh, yeah, me too. And it comes down to consistency as well. Like you said, like, yeah, we're both in the same city, but to be consistent, it has to be convenient. Like the easier it is, the more consistent you'll be. And if we were to meet up somewhere, whether it's at my place or yours every week, like just doing it this way, it's a 1 hour podcast, but it takes us 2 hours to by the time we start talking, making coffee, start recording, then debrief afterwards, it's 2 hours in one day. So if we had to do it, if we were doing it in person, it would turn easily into 4 or 5 hours. So 5 hours every week for a podcast that you're not getting paid for can be a bit we would probably cancel a few more times than we have in the past. We would probably, everything would get a little bit more complicated, and then consistency would be affected. So from that perspective, I think, yeah, doing it this way is
and
a good idea.
It helps with our guests, because our guests, instead of coming to Montreal to meet us or whatever, we can get a guest from anywhere. So that's one of the reasons why we did choose this. And honestly, It's all about consistency. So I'll ask one more question to you, E. For sports videographers, what should they try to be consistent on? So it should be like, how could they be consistent?
Good question. I'd say if you take it from a perspective of like how to get noticed and then sort of make a career out of this, I'd say your consistency should be your style. Like, and in a way, like basically you should find a style, whether it's probably a combination of your filming and your editing, but it's probably going to mostly be in your editing. Find your own style and stick to it, because that way you'll get hired, not because you're the cheapest, not because you live next door or you know this guy, or you happen to have a friend who plays on that team. You'll get hired because people noticed your style that's a bit different than the rest, and they really like it, and they want that style for their videos. So if you can have whether it's a certain look, certain effects that you do that other people don't, a certain perspective of when you're filming a game, something that will make you stand out, but that you do consistently so that it's in all your social media and it's always popping up, so that way people recognize your work straight away. Because of that consistency, that's going to become your calling card. That's going to be the reason why people reach out and they want you to come and film a video for them, highlight reel or something.
I think that's a great point. The only thing I would add to that too is don't be shy to take photos or videos with your camera at events and show that you're out there. Something that I never did in the past, and I kind of wish I did. Because it will help show that you're involved. People will check your socials and they'll see like it'll give you a little bit of authority in that space. And B, later on, you're going to want them for memories because there's a lot of cool events that I worked on that I have no photos, no nothing. I have footage, but that's it. So I think it's really important, and it's something that I've been trying to do more. Like I filmed a baseball tournament the other weekend, and we made sure at the end that we took a picture all together. And sometimes, you're just tired after an event or before an event and or you're stressed before an event. Try and take those two moments and take a quick photo of you with your gear or whatever. And it doesn't, even if you don't post it on social that day, you might need it later on, or might want to see the camera setup or how this was done later on in the image. So definitely take photos or a quick video of your setup, of your rig, your camera, and you filming that, because it will come in handy later on. And for days where you're quiet and you have no content, you can always post one of those and say, hey, throw back to when I was cool and I filmed this NBA game, or whatever. So it will help you be consistent also, because you don't always have to post the day you're doing something. You can post it later on too, and it'll help you be consistent. And the more content you put out there, the more chances you have of being seen.
Good point.
Yeah.
Are we at the Q&A part?
Yeah, we're going a little bit long here. All right, so I got a question for you, E.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, we talked about it. It's actually the question that you were going to ask, but I'm just stealing it, right? Because I got to it first. No, I was asking before, when you film the show, you film on a prime lens on your FX30. So what lenses do you suggest for a beginner sports videographer? Oh, I guess it's more sports related, but what is, like, if you have a certain budget, what is a good versatile lens that someone could start off with? Because that's a question you get asked a lot, right?
Yes. Well, it depends on the budget, depends on the sports, depends on a lot of things. Because if you're only gonna have one lens, and you're probably gonna have to sacrifice some quality, because the wider the zoom range, the less quality there'll be in the NNA in terms of sharpness and autofocus and all these things. So if you only have enough money for one and you want to be able to cover everything, which is pretty much what everybody who DMs me wants, an 18 to 200 millimeter lens is usually what I recommend. It's a budget-ish type of lens. It's a variable aperture. It's not the sharpest. It's not the best in terms of autofocus, but you'll be able to get anything in frame, whether it's up close and personal or whether it's at the other end of a football field. So for that reason, I'd say start with that, and then whatever annoys you the most about that lens, that's what you'll fix with your next purchase. If you're coming into a little bit more money and you want a 70 to 200 that's sharper, that's better image quality, all that sort of stuff, that's obviously going to be more money, but yeah, you'll know basically, like, if, for example, if your footage is super shaky and it's annoying you, then maybe for the next lens you try to find something that has image stabilization in it, although some of the 18s to 100 do have it. But yeah, as a first lens, that's what I recommend. And then I would try to go personally, like my thing, I like to have a constant aperture lens if I can, something that can go, it doesn't have to be 2.8, but maybe an f4. So yeah, if I'm only filming indoor sports like basketball, volleyball, that maybe I'm going more with like a 24 to 105, something like that, or a 28 to 75 Tamron. But if I'm filming outdoors, then I'm probably going more with a 70 to 200. What about you? Because I was going to ask you, like, what you think the best lens is for, like, outdoor sports and what the best lens is for indoor sports. So
I I think for outdoor sports you want at least a 200 millimeter. Now it could be variable, obviously. Indoors, I think the 2875. I think that's good for everything. And the reason why I'll just use me for instance. So I have right now I'm mostly film on the A7 IV. So when I do film in 60, it's crop. So it's zoomed in a little bit more. So that 75 is more like a 95 or well, I think it's 1.5. So about 85 then. So it gives me a little bit closer too. So I find that's pretty good, at least for when I'm filming hockey, because I'm focusing on the action that's in the zone I'm in. I'm not so much focused on what's happening on the other side. But if I was focused on both ends, then yeah, the 18 to 200 is actually a very, very good option. Obviously, yeah, you want that low aperture one, but the lower the aperture, the higher the price. So, but I think the 2875 is a very, very affordable lens. I have the Tamron. It's what, 900 US. So, you know, it's out there, but the quality is really good. It's sharp. I'm actually using it right now. But I have it on 28, so I don't know how sharp my image is. I definitely can see a glare on my forehead, but for me, it's a really, really good camera. I also really love the other Tamron, the 17 to 28, the wide.
Yeah.
I use that a lot. I use it a lot on my gimbal. First of all, it's a little smaller, so it's a little bit lighter. And I have been using it on my gimbal. I started putting it vertical on my gimbal to try for. I was doing some gym videos the other day. And it was really, really good. I was really, really impressed with it. Because
filming yourself trying to get swole, or what's the gym video? What's the gym video? Is it you in front of the mirror trying to?
No. It's actually a training regimen that my son and his teammates are doing it. They all play high level hockey, so helping out the gym with a little contract to promote them. But yeah, so that's what I go to now. Honestly, outdoor sports, you need a longer lens, but indoor sports like basketball and that'll get you through it. Even baseball, if you're in the dugouts, the 28 to 75 is definitely a good solid starter kit, because it's also good for interviews and locker room stuff too, right? Because when you're doing these games, you get thrown into different situations all the time. So for me, that's my go-to, and it's budget friendly. That's why it became my go-to.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like when I said 18 to 200, like ideally, like you like there's a Tamron 35 to 150 that's like f2 to 2.8. Doesn't have stabilization, but like that's a great lens that can kind of film all sports. But
film everything.
If you're a budget videographer and you have like a Sony ZV-10, that lens is going to be worth double, maybe even 3 times your camera, I think. So it just depends on how much money you want to put on the lens. But in saying that, cameras, you'll definitely update, where lenses, you can keep forever. So spending more money on the lens than on the camera is not that crazy, in my opinion.
You know what? It's not crazy when you become a seasoned veteran at this, but when you're a new beginner, it sounds crazy, eh? Because you buy this camera,
yeah,
so
exactly.
excited.
It sounds crazy. Yeah.
And then you open the box and there's no lens, and you're like, okay, now I need a lens. So it's tricky. It's tricky, but
you know what I mean? Like if you start with a ZV-10 and then let's say you get an FX30 and you get an FX6 and whatever, that lens is always going to be in your kit, and you're always going to be able to use it, and it's going to serve the same purpose. Like it's not like it's going to be less professional later on in life. Where a camera, if you're starting with an HD camera, then you're going to eventually buy a 4K camera, and then you're going to have, like, you want to have a camera that does more high frame rate in 4K. So you're switching that camera as you're evolving, where the lens you'll always keep.
Also, if you buy a second camera, you have multiple lenses, so you don't have to go and buy a lens right away for that camera. You can use one of your other lenses, which can give you a different look. So, all right. Well, I guess that's it for today's episode. Hopefully we gave you guys some tips on being consistent and showed how we struggle and try to be as consistent as possible.
Yes. Again, sorry for the noise if we didn't manage to edit it out. So yeah, I apologize.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Game Day Glare.
So yeah.